The Illinois Policy Institute opposes this bill because it moves to make bondholders supreme over taxpayers and people who need government services in the case that someone gets in financial trouble. So in this case, it's about RTA and CTA. But what this is doing is it's specifically saying that the people who lend money will be secured over all other interests. So if there is a financial problem, everybody should be in line. And if anybody's going to be put in the front of the line, we would think it should be taxpayers over people who've lent money, over bondholders, over banks. So that's the specific problem with securing bondholders and securing banks here. Also, to the expansion of the ability for the treasurer to come in and buy bonds that are possibly bad bonds. This is expanding a power that is a dangerous power to give to the treasurer. And as was noted, defaults shouldn't happen that much, but the treasurer shouldn't be investing in anything that has a risk of default. It gives the treasurer the ability to intervene where there's a default risk. The treasurer shouldn't be getting involved there. If someone's going to take a loss on a bond, it should be the banks and the bondholders that lent money to those financial institutions.
Mr. Lucci, then I just would like you to, can you rectify the statement that you made about the bondholders? Now, in this instance, it sounds like Representative Riley is saying the bondholders are the taxpayers of the state of Illinois, and you're saying we shouldn't put the bondholders in front of the taxpayers.
We would be saying that the taxpayers should not be buying bonds from the institutions that would otherwise be holding them. So if there's a risk of default, which is clearly being addressed because the language of default is in the bill, taxpayers, the treasurer, should not be investing tax dollars in bonds that have any risk of default. And clearly there's a preparation being made here for default, because it's saying in the case of default, this is what's going to happen. So that's why we would object to this language and this expansion of the treasurer's ability to invest in bonds that might not pay out. So if the bonds don't pay out, it should be the banks that originally lent them money who take the hit. It shouldn't be taxpayers through the treasurer that take the hit on this.
Of course they would like this language. Of course they would. That's the whole point of it. It gives them a super lien over all other creditors in that case, in the case of defaults. But your language, even though you're saying the Treasury would not have to invest in the CTA bonds, the truth is your entire bill is written upon their investment in CTA and RTA bonds. So you're writing a bill for something that you have just given us testimony saying that they wouldn't have to do it. Well, you're writing a bill to have them do it and give them super protection. That the treasurer held 10% of the bonds and 90% of it was held outside of the market with other bondholders. It simply by the treasurer investing in that fund means that all those bondholders can receive the intercept from the treasurer. It does not in any way limit it to only what the treasurer itself has invested in. It says simply because they have invested, period. There's no limiting factor in here whatsoever. There's none. Your language does not limit it. Just because they've invested means that all bondholders could be covered by this intercept.
Well, I can tell you that would be a pretty.
That's exactly what could
remarkable.
Happen.
Well,
that's exactly what could happen. Your bill does not limit it.
That's certainly not the intent.
I understand that's not the intent. Unfortunately, if we pass this into law, the courts will interpret it as it's written.
We don't know what the courts would interpret it as.
I'm telling you right now, I think that this language opens it up to every single bondholder, not just the treasurer bonds, to be protected additionally. So that's one issue with the bill. The other issue is the fact that Mr. Lucci brought up from the Illinois Policy Institute, and that issue is the fact that these state funds that are intercepted to go to the CTA are actually meant to go to real services that the CTA and its customers base depends on. So whether that's infrastructure projects, fair support, pension obligations, you name it, everything that they need to fund, the money from the state is intended to go to that. It's not intended to pay off bondholders that perhaps made a risky investment at some point and that they have defaulted on. So that intercept money should first go to the CTA and let them decide if they are truly in default and they need to go through some sort of other procedure, whether it's some sort of super agreement with its creditors to get out of this mess, then so be it. But the bondholders should not be protected above taxpayers, above customers, and above other holders of their debt.
Curious, who brought the language of this bill?
The controller and the treasurer made an agreement.
Is the controller or someone from the controller or treasurer's office here?
I have no idea. If they thought it was,
I'm just trying to. Why this has come up now? I just want to know what's the underlining. What's that word?
Well, I sort of already addressed that. That's what
motivation.
That's what second reading is all about, and they felt that they wanted a mechanism to protect the state in a very rare case, certainly of an entity like this defaulting.
Neither one of them said that the language came from them. Neither one of them. In fact, we were told it came from the Speaker's office directly. Can I make one more comment? Because yesterday on the House floor, they passed HB 3005, and we reached out to some experts in this field. One of them was Kim Fowler, who's the general counsel with the GOMB, and this was her response to 3005, which this underlying language is the same. I'm thinking that HB 3005 is designed to allow the state treasurer to buy bonds sold by the City of Chicago, Cook, CTA, and RTA and still claim they are a good investment. My guess is that right now the treasurer really can't buy those bonds. It'd be a bad investment for the state and arguably a mini bailout for locals. But this legislation would allow him to help out those locals and claim it's a good deal for the state. The state could be a big bond buyer, especially for short-term bonds, which are difficult for Chicago to sell given their current lousy financial condition. That's what other people are saying about this. This language is horrific for taxpayers of the state of Illinois. It's terrible for people who depend on the CTA because their services will be cut in the case of a default, and bondholders and bankers will be bailed out instead.
Partisan leave being granted. Mr. Clerk, please note that with 7 members voting yes and 5 members voting no and 0 voting present, House Floor Amendment 2 to House Bill 3004 be favorably reported to the House